Hey guys, welcome to the Spooky Okie podcast.
I'm Madison,
And I'm Catherine.
and we have a true crime episode for you guys. We're back with the true crime episode. For us, it's
Whoop
only
whoop.
been a few minutes since the last episode, but for you guys, it's been a week. So, when is this coming out? Right after Thanksgiving?
I think so.
Great. Happy Thanksgiving, guys. Let's listen to some
Yeah.
horrible stories together.
I thought about doing a Thanksgiving episode and I was like, no. It was like Thanksgiving Day Massacre, and I was like, no, I probably shouldn't do
No, you should have done that. I didn't think
that.
of that. That was so good. So awful.
It
But
was
so
it was
good.
pretty dark. I was like, oh, I don't
Oh,
know.
okay.
I mean, not like the one I'm doing today is also really dark, so I don't know why I'm
Mine is
saying it
too.
like it's not dark,
They're
but
all dark. That's the thing, is like they're all dark. Some of them kind of hit harder than others sometimes,
yeah.
which shouldn't really be the case. I mean, unless it's like that one that you did that was pretty much just funny.
Yeah.
Those are great. Okay, so we
Yeah.
both have heavy ones today, then it sounds like.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Mine's pretty heavy today.
Who do you want to go first?
It doesn't matter.
Okay. I can go first.
Okay.
Cool. Great.
Sweet.
All right. So I am going to talk about the State Fair murders.
Ooh, I've
And
not
I
heard
will
of this.
Interesting, because there are two different sets of State Fair murders.
Really?
Yep, that's what I was about to say before we started recording. And then I was like, wait, let me hit record so I can say it on the podcast. Yeah, I thought about if I had spent a little more time on notes and not done them, started these at midnight. I started
Hey,
them
at
at
least you
midnight last
started
night.
them. At least you started them that early.
I did my notes from midnight to 2:30 a.m. If I had started ahead of time, I would have covered both State Fair murders. It's two sets of two girls. Isn't that
Oh,
interesting? It was like 6 years
wow.
apart. They're all in the 80s. So I almost made it like a 2-for-1 story, but I went ahead and
Wow.
just picked one to focus on. Because it's
Hmm.
long, it's pretty long in and of itself. There's a lot to it. So I went ahead
Yeah.
and just did one. But if I had started notes earlier, because I didn't realize
Yeah.
there were two different ones, then I would have done all of them. So,
Wow.
yep. When's the last time you went to the state fair, Catherine?
Um, I it was probably when I was in high school.
That's
Um,
same.
but I did in college, I did go to the West Texas Fair and Rodeo every
Oh,
year.
okay. Okay.
That was like our big thing. We would go and hang out. It was really fun.
Oh, fun. Yeah, I don't remember the last time I went to the state fair. And after hearing the story, I don't know that I want to go to the state fair anymore. After knowing
Okay.
there is two separate murder cases at the Oklahoma State
Yeah.
Fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, quick
So
anecdote about the West Texas Fair and Rodeo. Sorry.
great. Yes, go for it.
Okay, so the first year we went and watched some of the rodeo competitions,
Uh-huh.
and Colt and Jesse
Ooh,
competed. And
my neighbor.
yeah. And so
Not anymore, but he was.
yeah. And so he when it was his turn to go up, they were like, "Is anybody from Oklahoma?" And I was like, "What?" I was screaming, and I was the only one.
Awkward. You would think in Texas there would be more.
You would think. And they were like, "Well, there's one crazy Okie here."
It was you.
It was
Congratulations.
me.
Now
But
you're
it
a
was so
spooky okie.
now I'm spooky Okie. Yeah, it was so funny though, because it was like, yeah, I actually know that guy. They were like, "You're kidding. The one like Oklahoman competing in this and you know him." I was like, I know, that's really weird. But I
That
went
is
to school with
wild.
his cousin. I mean,
Yeah, that is wild. Yeah, I mean, he lived like right down the road from me.
I was like, I literally graduated with his cousin.
That's wild. Oh my goodness. Of course. Of course. And it's not like we're even from like a big town or anything. Like it's tiny, but he just happened to be from
Yeah.
the same tiny town.
Yeah. It was
Crazy.
hilarious.
Okay. I should jump into this story
Yeah.
probably.
Yeah.
Sorry, I
Let's
got
do it.
really distracted talking about the state fair. I
I love
don't
it.
know why I act surprised that I'm like, yeah, I got really distracted. I'm the one that gets us off track every single episode.
But I feed into it. I give you more ammo.
I guess so. I start this crazy journey. Okay. My sources for the state fair murders are KFOR.com, The Oklahoman, and Going West podcast. They had an episode about it.
Oh, okay.
So listen to that, or part of that at least. So this is a cold case.
Ooh, okay.
which are my favorites and least favorites at the same time, you know?
Yeah, I feel that. I
It's
thought
always
about
a
doing a
little bit
cold
like
case.
unsettling.
Yeah,
Ooh,
I thought about doing one.
yeah, I enjoy cold cases. I think they're really interesting, but they always make me really frustrated,
Yeah.
you know? Although I will say I know who did it. I think it's pretty obvious, but it's still
Okay.
technically a cold case.
Okay.
And this is the case of Cheryl Genzer and Lisa Pennington, and it's
Okay.
known as the State Fair murders.
All right.
So Cheryl and Lisa were sisters.
Okay.
Cheryl Pennington Genzer was born on June 20th, 1962, to parents Charlotte and Rocky Pennington. There were 4 siblings in total. So there was Cheryl and then 2 brothers, Alan and Ronnie, and then the little sister, Lisa.
Okay.
So in 1987, 25-year-old Cheryl married a man named Mike Genzer, and they were briefly married. Like they married that year, but by the time this happened in September, like
Uh-huh.
they were separated. So like she married and took his last name, but they separated pretty quickly.
Okay.
So they were separated by this point. So that's in 1987. She's 25. So that's why her last name is different, but they're sisters.
Okay. Gotcha.
So then Lisa, and they have like both the same parents. But Lisa Pennington was born on October 6th, 1970. She loved music and fashion, and she was described as a, quote, quiet, pretty girl who was every bit a teenager.
Okay.
So just like your typical teenager. The family remembers them both as having like beautiful smiles. They enjoyed music and they enjoyed life, and they were still really young. They both really liked
Hmm.
fashion. Like apparently they always, it didn't matter what they had going on that day, they would get up and they would do their makeup, and like they liked to look their best. And so that was like a big deal for them. They loved fashion, loved
Nice.
makeup, loved getting dressed up, that sort of thing. Just like fun loving girls, still like
Hmm.
super young. So Cheryl and Lisa were also Native American. I'm not sure which tribe,
Okay.
but I'm throwing this in because we know that this tragically puts them at a significantly higher risk for murder, violence, and sexual violence.
And
So,
for that not being solved.
mm-hmm, yep, I'm thinking that might play a part. So I feel like because we're an Oklahoma-based podcast, I think it's like really important that we do what we can to raise awareness about missing and murdered Indigenous women, because so many of our stories are covering that.
Yep.
So I'm going to share some statistics. I've shared these before, but you know what? I'm going to share them every chance I get, because it's like this huge, awful issue.
Yeah.
And I know we have the smallest platform ever, but it's still a platform. So if we can
Yeah.
use it to do some sort of good, then I'm going to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Plus
I agree.
my little sister is Native American, and so every time I read these statistics, I just get angry and am really frustrated that she unfortunately is in so much more danger than I am. And I feel like as a small woman, I'm already
Hmm.
in so much danger, and the fact that she's in so much more danger just because she is Native American is insane. So I'm going to share
Yep.
these statistics every single time I can. I will link to resources in our show notes.
Perfect.
And I would also encourage, I haven't talked to you about this ahead of time, but I would encourage, instead of signing up for our Patreon this time, like I'm not going to encourage that this episode. I'm going to encourage you to donate to some funds that will support the missing and murdered Indigenous women funds.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yeah. So I'm going to get into the statistics. So this is according to the Native Americans or Native Women's Wilderness site. But as of 2016, the National Crime Information Center has reported 5,712 cases of missing American Indian and Alaska Native women and girls. Strikingly, the U.S. Department of Justice Missing Persons Database has only reported 116 cases.
Oh, wow.
So 5,712, and there have been 116 reported in the Missing Persons Database.
Wow.
Yeah. So the majority of like the murders,
Hmm.
they are committed by non-native people on native-owned land.
Yes.
And so the lack of communication combined with the jurisdictional issues between
Hmm.
state, local, federal, and tribal law enforcement make it nearly impossible to even start the investigative process,
Yeah.
which we know means there's almost no chance of them getting rescued or getting any sort of justice, because you have to do that quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes so long to get anything started. So
Yeah.
frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
Indigenous women and girls are murdered at a rate of 10 times higher than all other ethnicities.
That's insane.
Murder, yep. Murder is the third leading cause of death for Indigenous women.
That's
Third,
insane.
murder.
That's insane.
That's according to the CDC. More than 4 out of 5 Indigenous women have experienced violence. That's 84.3% is the statistics on that.
That's awful.
It's an insanely high amount. More than half will experience sexual violence, 56.1%. More than half of Indigenous women have been physically abused by their intimate partners, 55.5%. These are insanely high statistics comparatively. Like,
it's insane.
Awful. Only slightly less than half of Indigenous women have been stalked in their lifetime. So that's 48.8%. That is really high. That's basically half. Indigenous women are 1.7 times more likely than Anglo-American women to experience violence. They are 2 times more likely to be raped than white women. And the murder rate is 3 times higher than white women.
Wow.
So
that's just insane.
It's insane. So I found a website that lists ways to help fight the missing and murdered Indigenous women epidemic, because that's really what it is at this point. It's a huge issue.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to link that in the description. So it lists like educational resources, petitions and calls to action, places to donate, Indigenous creators to support. So I'm going to link that in the show notes. So you guys check that out. In lieu of asking you to support us on Patreon this episode, I'm going to ask you to do that. I think that's way more important. So
absolutely.
That's my little spiel, and we'll get into the story now, but I just felt like all of that was really important to share. So
absolutely.
Okay, great. So here we go with the tragic story. Okay. So on Wednesday, September 23rd, 1987, 25-year-old Cheryl Genzer and her 16-year-old sister, Lisa Pennington, went to the Oklahoma State Fair together, along with their brother, Alan, and his girlfriend. So it was 3 of the siblings and the brother's girlfriend. And so keep in mind, Lisa is a minor. She's 16. The age difference is like
kind of weird.
A pretty big age difference, but like, so Cheryl she's 25, she's been married. Lisa is still a teenager. She's 16. So like, it's gonna, need to go home and things like that. She's gonna have school the next day, that sort of thing. So Alan's girlfriend had an 11 o'clock curfew. So he had left to take her home. And he told his sisters that he would be back to pick them up and take them home, but he had to like get her home. So she made her curfew.
Didn't miss curfew. Yeah.
Exactly. So they like agreed on a place to meet up, and they were going to meet there when Alan got back. But Cheryl and Lisa never showed up to the meeting place. So Alan started asking around, and he was told that his sisters had been hanging out with a fair employee who had been giving them free rides, and that they may have left with him and his friend.
Okay.
So we've at least sort of got some indication of where they went.
Okay.
So the fair employee in question, Alan found out, was 31-year-old Lane Henley, and his friend was 21-year-old Doug Lawson. I think Doug was actually the one like who was running the ride, and he was like giving them the free rides. But apparently, Cheryl, the older one, knew Lane, who's 31. So they're like 6 years apart. So I guess they like knew who each other were. So they had all kind of started hanging out after Alan left.
Gotcha.
And so people were like, yeah, I think they maybe left with them. So that's where they're at. So Alan went home because what are you going to do?
Right.
And he told his parents, who were worried, but they thought like maybe the girls had gone to stay at a friend's house. At least they're together. Like one of them is an adult,
Right.
So they're worried. Like their 16-year-old is gone and needs to go to school the next day, I'm assuming. But, they're not as worried as they would be if it was just one or the other. Like they were at least together. One of them's an adult, and they thought they might just be at a friend's house. Like it might not be a big deal. So they didn't like report them missing right away because they just thought, they don't have cell phones. Like it's 87. So they can't just like send a text. They just thought, okay, they probably went to a friend's house. It's no big deal. But they waited till the weekend, and this had happened on a Wednesday. So by the time it gets to the weekend, the girls still hadn't come home. So the family knew that something was wrong at this point because they would not
Yeah.
just disappear and not say anything.
Right.
And so they reported them missing that Sunday because they were like, okay, we thought maybe they went to a friend's house. We thought maybe they just kind of like ran off for a few days. We're out having fun, but it's been quite a few days and we haven't heard anything and we're getting worried. So they reported them missing that Sunday. So their mom, Charlotte, said the police kept telling the family that the girls were just runaways. So they weren't looking for them, for at least at the beginning. They were not looking. They told the family they're just runaways. Yeah, so the family knew that this wasn't the case. And one
Same
of the
thing happens
reasons
in my case.
really, it's so frustrating. Like, I get it. I get that that happens. Like, I get that there are many instances that they're being runaways, but if the family is like, no, that's out of character and we are worried,
right,
look for them. Look for them.
Yeah.
I know there's not endless resources. Like, I get that, but it's missing people. Like, I don't know, look for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, or at least don't tell the family, oh, it's fine, they're just runaways. Like, if they are telling you, like, no, they didn't run away, like something's wrong.
It's one thing if they're like, I don't know how much we can help.
Right.
Or something like that. Or they're like, well, okay, we're making our report, but you know, we're short of investigators.
Right.
Or you know, it's one thing if that's the response, but to say, oh, I'm sure they've just run away. Like, you're worrying about nothing.
Yeah,
you just go back home and wait.
That was apparently the response. But like the family was like, that's not true. Like, they are not runaways. And one of the ways they knew that is because, like I said earlier, the girls always would like get up and do their makeup and like all of this. They didn't take any of their stuff with them.
That's the same as mine.
No way.
Yeah.
We didn't do the same case, did we?
No.
Okay. Yeah.
Definitely not.
They were like, these girls are not going to go anywhere without their makeup. Like, not to call them like, you know, not to be like, oh, they're girls, they need their makeup. But like, that was something that they enjoyed. And that was something they always did. Even if they didn't have anything planned for the day, they were going to get up and they were going to do their makeup because it's something that they liked. So they knew they are not going to just run off, like run away without their makeup and stuff. Like, they didn't take anything with them. They didn't run away. So, but the police didn't believe them. So, since Charlotte was like, okay, the police aren't going to do anything, she decided to take matters into her own hands. So she tracked down Lane Henley, who is one of the last people that the girls had been seen with, because Alan had asked around, the brother had asked around while he was there, and they were like, yeah, they were with Lane. So she tracks him down. But Lane's story changed every single time she talked to him. She talked to him multiple times, and the story was always something different.
Interesting.
Yep. So his first story to her, so this is not to police, like this is the mother having tracked him down. His first story was that Cheryl and Lisa had come to his house in the Village that night, which is like, for people who don't know, it's like 20 minutes north of downtown. So like not super far from like the fairgrounds.
No, it's like same area relatively.
Yeah, it's pretty close. It's not like a separate town or anything, just a different area. So he said that they had come to his house there, and that they had left on foot that night together. And when he saw them leave, they were safe and happy, but they like left on foot together.
Okay.
Later, he changed his story and said that someone had actually picked them up, but he didn't know who it was. So now they didn't leave on foot together. Somebody picked them up. He just doesn't know who. And then he changed his story again and said that they actually left his house to go use a payphone. So like they just went to use a payphone and didn't come back, but also he had a landline. So like, why would they go use a payphone?
So yeah, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah. So he's changing his story every single time. Not adding up, buddy. But he denied having any involvement. He was like, nope, they left my house. They were fine when they left my house. But then about a month later, Cheryl and Lisa's bodies were discovered in a shallow grave. They were side by side and they had both been shot in the head. And I don't believe, if I'm remembering right, I didn't put this in my notes. I don't know why. Probably because I was doing this at 2 a.m. If I remember correctly, it wasn't police that found their bodies because they hadn't really been looking for them. It was somebody who was like out fishing or something like that. Like somebody out, like, because it was such a shallow grave or shallow graves.
There's a lot of weird similarities between our cases.
Really?
Yeah, like the mom contacting people, that somebody else random finding Yeah.
Because I'm pretty sure it was not police. I'm pretty sure it was like a random person who was out and about, and I want to say they were fishing or something like that. But they just found the bodies because they noticed that the dirt had been recently disturbed and it was starting to wash away because it was really shallow graves, and they saw body parts sticking out.
Yikes.
So
Not good.
yeah. So they were discovered in Britain, which is pretty close to the village, like same general area, which is where Lane Henley lived. And police questioned both Lane and Doug, the friend, but they provided alibis for each other.
Okay, so that doesn't mean it's an alibi.
Well, they counted it as an alibi.
That doesn't count.
I know. Yeah, when your two suspects are like, oh, I was with him. Oh, I was with him. We were together.
Then that doesn't
count.
That doesn't count.
No, they counted it as alibis.
That's lovely. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That's really sorry. That's so stupid.
Yeah, so the case stalled until 1990, so like 3 years, 2 or 3 years, when police brought Doug in for questioning again. But this time, Doug changed his story. So Doug is the friend. He changed his story. So Doug stated that he, Lane, Cheryl, and Lisa, the four of them, all left the fair around 11:30 that night, and they went to a party at a friend's house. Okay. I don't know who the friend was, but they all went to a party together, and then they left the party and went to Lane's house at about 2 a.m.
Okay.
He said that he had passed out after drinking, smoking weed, and doing cocaine. And then when he awoke about an hour later, he heard Cheryl yelling at Lane for sexually assaulting Lisa, who was 16. And apparently Cheryl found out. So Doug claimed to have seen Lane hit Cheryl in the face with a handgun when she tried to flee from his car. So at some point they made it to the car. Like, I'm not exactly sure where this all lines up.
Okay.
He said that Cheryl tried to get out of the car and Lane hit her in the face with a handgun. And then Lisa must have also been in the car because she tried to escape the car and run back inside the house. But then Lane caught her and hit her in the face with a shovel.
Oh, no.
Yep. And then Lane forced the girls back into the car and drove away. And Doug said then he went to sleep.
Of course he did.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's actually another similarity to my case. But
really?
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, okay. This is wild.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, he went to sleep. And then hours later, when Lane had returned, Lane told Doug that he had dropped the girls off at a nearby 7-Eleven. And I guess he just went with that story, apparently. I don't know. But on August 28th of 1990, Lane was arrested and charged with the murders of Cheryl and Lisa. But here's the catch. So Doug, the friend who admitted all of this, who became the witness, he was facing multiple felony drug charges, and he was testifying in exchange for immunity from those charges.
Oh, that's not good.
No. So, Lane ended up in jail for 19 months awaiting trial. And then in 1992, Doug recanted his entire testimony. And since he was the star witness, he was the only person with any information. The only case they had against Lane was Doug saying all this had happened. And now he's recanted. The prosecutors didn't have a case anymore. There wasn't any physical evidence, or at least none that they had found at that point in time. It's early 90s, so they don't have all the DNA stuff that we have now. And so the charges were dropped, and he was set free. Gosh. So I will say, Doug doesn't sound like the most reliable witness, so who knows what the actual story is. So I'm not going to say, like, oh, Doug must have been telling the truth, because I don't think he's a very reliable witness.
No, doesn't sound like it.
Yeah. So Doug was asked why he recanted, and his response was, quote, "It's destiny."
Oh, gosh. Oh, what an idiot.
Yep. So then Doug ends up serving 5 years for perjury because of the story that he supposedly made up, which who knows if he made it up or if it was true. Like, I don't know what happened, but He
But you
was toying
can't
with
say that
everybody's.
and then
Yeah.
you can't do that
Yep.
and then yeah. So whether it's true or
Mm-hmm.
not, but you're screwed.
Yeah. At some point, you lied. I don't know which way it was, but at some point, you lied.
At some
So
point
he
you lied.
got 5 years for perjury. Oh, and
Good.
remember those drug charges he was trying to get out of?
Oh, I bet he got those.
They refiled those. Mm-hmm.
Good. Good.
Yeah. So I
Good.
don't know what ended up happening with that, but all I know is like, oh, they definitely refiled those. I don't know what the verdict was or anything, but
Yeah.
yeah. So
He
Doug
he probably
serves
thought that when they
time.
like got rid of those that he could
That he
just
was
say
good and he could just
whatever.
stop. Yeah, he
Yeah.
didn't realize they would refile them, I guess. Okay, so
Stupid.
as for Lane, I'm nearing the end of my story, but
Okay.
as for Lane, he ended up moving to Roswell, New Mexico, and then in 2000, his girlfriend, 35-year-old Molly Cahey, I don't remember how to say that. Cahey, I think. His 35-year-old girlfriend, Molly, went missing. And
Wow.
guess what? Her body was found later in a shallow grave and she had been shot in the head. Sound familiar?
Sounds real familiar.
And guess what? Her murder remains unsolved. Mm-hmm. Then in 2008, another one of Lane's girlfriends died. This one I will say doesn't add up to the others. Like it doesn't fit the MO. And so this one was 38-year-old Amy Mirabel died in a fire. Like their trailer house caught on fire.
Okay.
And Lane escaped with second and third degree burn. So he also was like in the fire. So
okay.
Like police say the fire appears to be accidental. Like it doesn't seem like there's any signs of foul play or anything like that. It's just a little strange, you know.
It is odd.
So I don't think he did that one. Who knows? But
unless he did and he messed something up and that's why he got burned too.
Right. Yeah. But they did say like there weren't any signs of foul play. But the one before that is pretty familiar. So
it is. It's very familiar.
Which is why I'm like, yeah, this is a cold case. It's an unsolved case, but I think it's pretty well solved. Like,
yeah.
So, but to this day, the murders of Cheryl and Lisa remain unsolved. Both of their parents have since died, and they're buried beside their daughters. But they never got any sort of justice or anything, like any answers, nothing. Like their entire life, they were just wanting to see what had happened. But Cheryl and Lisa's brothers are still hoping for justice. So I am hoping that this is one that they'll reopen and look at.
Hopefully. I'm not sure. It seems like there's got to be something.
They have plenty of things they could run DNA on. They have physical evidence. Like I was reading some articles. They have physical evidence there. Like they haven't run DNA.
I know
it's expensive. Like I know it's expensive to do, but like I can't help but wonder if part of the reason that they haven't revisited this is because these are two Native American girls.
Yeah. Do we know the ethnicity of his girlfriend in, was it Arizona?
I do not. New Mexico, but I don't know.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. So that is the story of the Oklahoma State Fair murders. At least two of them.
Wow.
There's another set of them that was 6 years before, but.
Wow.
Yep.
Well done. That was a good case. Bad case, but good case.
Yep. So reminder, I will put all of the not statistics, but the links to find all of that information in the show notes. So please go take a look at that. Donate if you can, sign petitions, do anything you can to help.
Yep. Yes, please. All right. So today I am covering the story of the murder of Heather Rich.
Okay. I don't know this one.
So my sources are wikipedia.org, texasmonthly.com, which, by the way, if you are interested at all in the story, you need to go read the article on Texas Monthly. It was a huge piece on this case.
Okay.
It was really, really interesting. And they have like some follow-up articles too. So it's really interesting. Okay. And then newson6.com, abcnews.com, and medium.com.
Cool.
All right. It starts out rough. Just warning you. It was a dusky evening on October 9th, 1996, a rancher was driving down a dirt road with his 7-year-old granddaughter. As they passed a creek that feeds the Red River, they both saw something in the water below. The grandfather, having forgotten his glasses at home, thought it must be a drowned calf that had floated downstream. But his granddaughter, even when they got home, insisted that it had been a girl.
Oh.
The next day, as he was doing his morning rounds, he stopped again at the creek, this time in the clear morning light with his glasses on. He could clearly see that it was indeed a young girl dead in the water, blonde hair floating around her mutilated face.
Oh. Okay. This does
After
start
only
really rough.
It does. After only a few hours, she was identified as Heather Rich, who had been missing since October 2nd. So this was October 9th when she was found. October 2nd was when she went missing. So Heather Rich was a high school student in Waurika, so southern Oklahoma. She was an honor roll student, cheerleader, and had just been nominated for homecoming queen. She was a pretty young girl who, according to her mother, enjoyed the attention of young boys and would often say, if you've got it, you flaunt it.
You go, girl.
Her parents actually tried to rein in her dating to protect her, especially after seeing men in their 40s try to flirt with their daughter. They didn't allow her to date until she was 16, and then would only allow her to go on double dates with her brother and his girlfriend. Okay. She hated this, and she talked about how she'd be the only virgin at school. Oh, she also hated living in a small town with nothing to do. She wanted to be in a bigger city with more things to do. Waurika is a small town. There's not much there. Very similar to Cornwall.
Yes. Yes.
She started going out with friends to the lake to drink, smoke marijuana, and eventually she started doing meth.
Oh, no. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotta love small towns.
Gotta love small towns. So, at this point in her life, her home life was pretty stressful. Her father, Dwayne, was an electrician, and he had almost died in a work accident.
Oh.
He was working on a line when a transformer blew up, causing him to have severe burns over 65% of his body.
Oh, okay.
Her mom, Gail, had started to work long hours to make up the income lost due to Dwayne being injured. So this meant that Heather was helping her dad changing bandages, doing things for his care, as well as doing most of the cooking and cleaning because her mom was at work. She was working like 16-hour shifts trying to make up the income. It was during this time that she started to use meth. She also started cutting herself during this time.
Oh, okay.
So she's having a rough time. This was not the first time that she had some issues. I think it was, for some reason I didn't have this in my notes, but I think it was when she was going into the 8th grade. She started purging. Because her boyfriend wanted her to stay the same size. And so she started purging to stay a size 2.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was during this stressful time, like I said, that she started to do meth. And it was a few days before her disappearance that she was actually suspended from school due to being drunk at a football game. So she showed up here and she's drunk.
Yeah.
So her parents told her that she would be seeing a therapist on October 3rd. And
good.
Yeah, so they're trying to make some things happen. So when Gail came home on October 2nd, she found that Heather had racked up a $300 phone bill talking to her friends from camp. Ooh. It was a bill that they could not afford. So after working a 16-hour shift, and then she comes home and finds that, she said, "All you ever do is cost me money," to her daughter. That evening, Heather went to her parents' room to tell her father goodnight. She walked out of the room, ignoring her mother, and that was the last time that Gail ever saw her daughter.
That's really rough.
Yeah. I about cried when I read that.
I don't like that at all. I can't imagine the guilt as a parent.
I know.
To know that that's the last thing you said to your kid. Not to like place any blame on her or anything, but like that would be really hard. Like that's a normal thing you say to your kid who is acting irresponsibly, making some poor choices. Like
Yeah.
That's a pretty normal thing to say as a parent when you lose your cool. Like,
Yeah.
it's not like she did anything wrong, really. Like
No.
she was stressed and she maybe lost her cool for a minute, but like,
Yeah, she just got done. She just got home from working a 16-hour
yeah,
shift trying to make ends meet for her family, and her daughter has run up a $300 phone bill.
yeah. And that was in the mid 90s, right?
Yeah, that's a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man. I can't imagine how guilty that mom must have felt. Oh my goodness.
Yep.
That's so sad. Okay.
All right, so the next morning, the Riches went to the sheriff's department to report Heather missing, but the
Mm-hmm.
sheriff's department wouldn't listen, telling them to go home, that Heather had probably just run away for a few hours.
Yep.
Gail knew this
Sounds
wasn't the
familiar.
case. Yeah, she knew this wasn't the case because her makeup bag that she never left was there along with all of her clothes. Also, her diary was open on her bed, so she knew
Mm.
that she was planning on returning. Nothing had
Oh,
been packed up for a runaway attempt.
yeah. Sounds so familiar.
Yes,
That's wild that these are,
I
wow.
know.
Okay. That's weird. Very specific things to
Very
be the
specific
same.
things.
Yeah.
So then Gail called Heather's ex-boyfriend, Randy Wood, who was absent from school that day, but he denied knowing anything. He claimed he was with Josh Bagwell all night the night before. Josh was also absent from school due to being suspended from school at the time. So she had called both of them. She was calling around, asking questions. 8 days later, the Riches were told that Heather's body had been found and would not be coming home. The
I
police
don't like
struggled.
when it's about kids or
I
like
know.
teenagers. Like,
I know.
they're so young. Mm.
Um, the police struggled to get leads, but eventually discovered that Heather had snuck out of the house to attend a party at Josh Bagwell's house. Randy Wood had already said that he had been with Josh that night, but they said that they didn't see Heather. The only other person that came over, they said, was Curtis Gamble, who spent a lot of time drinking with Josh. So Curtis Gamble
Why does
is
that name
not,
sound so familiar?
I'm not sure, but he is not a good character.
Uh-oh. Okay.
So at this point in his life, he's already been to juvie for bringing a gun
Uh-oh.
to school and threatening his teachers with it.
Okay. All
Mm-hmm.
right. We're hanging out with
While,
some not great crowds.
yeah, while in juvie, he actually said that it was one of his goals in life to kidnap a girl, rape her, and blow her head off with a gun.
Okay. Okay.
After he got out of juvie, he was doing a lot of drugs. According to his grandmother, he also had a mean streak to him.
Sounds like it. Sounds like that's
Which,
quite an understatement.
yeah. And also, this family has been through a lot. I can't remember who in the family it was. One of their family members had been killed by a serial killer.
Oh, in
Yeah.
Oklahoma? What serial killer? Because
Um,
we might need to do an episode on that serial killer.
I bookmarked this article so that I could come
Okay.
back and
Okay.
go
Yeah.
find the serial killer.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Oh, yikes.
yeah. Um, so Curtis had just recently lost his friend Dennis Wayne Goss. This friend had recently completed suicide, but
Mm.
Curtis was sure that it was a murder, not suicide. And he had been in a bad temper, brooding about this death since it happened.
Mm. Okay.
When his grandmother heard that Heather had been found, she tried to tell him, and he cut her off, saying that he didn't give a F about that little girl.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah,
Mm. Not a good look.
not a good look. Um, Also, a little bit about Josh. I didn't actually include this in my notes. Josh was from an affluent family,
Okay.
and it
And he's
was
the one who
widely.
hosted the party, right?
He's the one who hosted the party.
Okay. Got it.
They had the party in a party trailer behind his actual house. Um,
Okay.
yeah, and he was known to get his way. He was handsome. He was wealthy. He'd had like 5 cars at this point, and he was in high school.
Okay.
Yeah. He had little discipline at home. Got whatever he wanted. That's kind
Okay.
of the image that we have of Josh.
Got it.
Which Randy, Heather's ex-boyfriend, he was not from an affluent family. He had started doing marijuana, like at a very, very young age, because it was at his home and bad living situation, trying to overcome things, was on the football team, a star athlete, things like that. But not the best crowd.
Yeah.
So eventually, investigators were able to identify that the ammunition and gun used to shoot Heather came from Curtis. It was the same gun. They had recently bought ammo, like the day before. And so this allowed them to get to Curtis. Eventually, it took a long time working with these boys to try to get an answer. According to Curtis, Heather had a date with Josh that night. They were both drinking, and Josh kept giving Heather drinks until she was drunk. Then Josh had sex with her for a couple of hours.
Yep, I'm sure he did.
Yes. And then afterwards, she was
Which that's
kissing.
not having sex with somebody. That's rape if she's that
Yes.
drunk. But,
yes. That's why I put it in quotations.
Yes, I knew, but I thought, for our audio only listeners, I would clarify. We are not saying that that's like we know exactly what that is, and we will happily address that and say that's what it is. That's rape.
Yes. Afterwards, she was kissing Curtis and Randy, and they were also going to, quote unquote, have sex with her, but she passed out. She then later woke up crying and screaming. And then when she passed out again, Josh started freaking out that he didn't want to go down for raping Heather. Randy was
maybe
also...
don't rape her then.
Yeah, maybe keep it in your pants.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty simple, but maybe like know what consent is and follow that.
Yeah. Yep.
Randy was also freaking out about it because he had also tried to have sex with her. So Randy carried her while she was unconscious to Josh's pickup truck. They drove down to Belknap Creek Bridge, and Randy shot her 9 times in the back of the head and chest, and then told the others to throw her over the bridge, which they all did. Okay, so that's Curtis's story.
Okay.
Randy's story was slightly different. He said that he didn't have sex with Heather, but that Curtis did while she was in and out of consciousness.
Yeah.
Then it was Curtis's idea to take her to the bridge. And that when they got to the bridge, they sat her on the bridge and she fell over because she's unconscious.
What did you expect to happen?
I know. And so he goes into the truck, and then he hears the gun go off. And when he looks over, Curtis has the gun. When asked why he followed through with this, he said he didn't think that Curtis would actually kill her. Like when he was saying, "Oh, we'll take her to the bridge and kill her," he said he didn't think he was actually going to kill her.
What did he think was going to happen?
I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, they're all drunk at this point too, so I mean,
yeah,
they're not thinking, and they're teenagers. But he said he didn't believe it until they got to the bridge, but by then he was too scared of Curtis to stop it.
Okay, I'll give him that much. Yeah, I'm sure he was.
Yeah. So, there was a whole lot of trial stuff that I didn't go into. There was a whole lot, but one thing is that that I do want to touch on is that Josh's family, being wealthy like they are, had he never confessed to anything. Josh never did. His family had paid for this and big legal team to come to his defense. But there was a quote that I wanted to read. Randy decided to decline a plea deal the plea deal would have gotten him a shorter sentence and taken life off, or taken death penalty off the table.
Yeah.
But he chose to decline the plea deal so that his testimony would be more believable. Because basically there was no evidence without his confession saying that Josh knew that that's what they were going to do at the bridge. Josh's story basically was that he was not around while they were talking about that, and that he didn't know that's what was going to happen, kind of thing. That it was all Curtis and Randy.
Okay.
So, Randy declined the plea deal so that his testimony about Josh would be more believable.
Okay.
But at court, after the sentencing, because Josh did get he did get sentenced a 99-year sentence to be served concurrently. His mother said, "My son is no angel, but he damn sure is no murderer."
Well, he murdered someone.
Yeah.
Or at least stood by and watched it happen.
Exactly.
So,
which is
just as bad, really.
Just as bad. Yeah. So
in my book.
So they all ended up getting life imprisonment.
Okay. Good.
Yeah. Josh will be.
Were they all minors?
Curtis was not.
Okay.
I don't believe.
Okay.
But I believe that Randy and Josh were.
Okay. Okay. Surprised they all got life.
It's my understanding. It was hard to tell for sure.
Yeah.
Ages, but I think that Curtis wasn't, but that Randy and Josh were. But I think they were like 17.
Yeah, they probably decided to try him as adults.
Yeah. Because I think they were slightly older than Heather, and Heather was 16.
Okay. Got it.
I could be wrong.
So young.
I know.
So young.
So I saw a couple of different things on sentencing, and I think it's because of a later part that I'm about to say in a second. But at one point it said that Josh would be eligible for parole October 31st of 2026. But it might actually be later due to some other things.
Oh.
All right. Curtis also received life imprisonment, and that I did see. It did have a parole date, but then after some other things, he no longer had a parole date.
All right.
Randy does not have other things about him later, and he will be eligible for parole November 20th of 2036. So he has a longer life sentence.
He's got a ways to go.
He's got a ways to go because he declined that plea deal.
Yeah.
So, and the mom, actually, Heather's mom, she actually said, I thought this was really sad. She said, like, one of the investigators, he said, "I just don't feel very good about Randy Wood being in prison for the rest of his life." Like, this investigator tried to get him to plead guilty so that he could have a shorter sentence.